Welcome back to another edition of Boss Economics World, where we peel back the layers of government politicking to reveal the rotten economic cores at their hearts. Today, we're unpacking a drama that reads more like a bad script for an international thriller than serious economic policymaking, a tariff tango starring the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And let me tell you, the plot twists here are as predictable as they are disastrous. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently spilled the beans on Bloomberg Television's Wall Street Week, claiming that the Mexican government has proposed matching Washington's tariffs on Chinese goods. Not only that, but he also hinted that Canada might soon join the party, creating what he colorfully describes as Fortress North America. In other words, the idea is to erect a trade barrier wall of tariffs against the relentless flood of Chinese imports, a move that echoes the nationalistic bravado of bygone protectionist eras. At first glance, this might seem like a patriotic measure, an alliance among neighboring countries to protect local jobs and industries from foreign competition. However, behind the smiling political rhetoric lies a deadly cocktail of economic recession, supply chain disruptions, and market uncertainty. Let's peel this onion wide open. Since President Donald Trump imposed an extra 10% tariff on Chinese imports back in February, a surcharge on top of previous tariffs, tensions have been mounting. Already, tariffs affecting more than $300 billion in annual Chinese imports have disrupted global trade flows, promised to slow down economic growth, and have had a direct impact on American factories that rely on parts and components from abroad. Now, with Mexico and potentially Canada following suit, we're staring down the barrel of a coordinated trade war that threatens not only international relations but also domestic economic stability. Recent data from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, suggests that global economic growth could slow by up to 0.5% if major economies engage in sustained tariff battles. And guess what? A slowdown that size might seem negligible in the academic textbooks, but on the ground, it translates to fewer jobs, rising prices for everyday goods, and a visible recession that the ordinary citizen can't ignore. Consider this: Trump's tariffs are now on goods ranging from electric vehicles to semiconductors. For instance, U.S. auto manufacturing, a sector once heralded as the backbone of the American economy, is now scrambling to piece together supply chains disrupted by these artificial borders. A recent report from the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis revealed that the manufacturing slowdown could lead to a 1.2% contraction in industrial output over the next 2 years. When you have sectors critical to innovation and growth caught in the crossfire, the real casualty isn't just trade, it's long-term competitiveness. Mexico's plan, reportedly focusing on the auto sector, cars and auto parts, among other finished goods, hints that the Mexican government sees an opportunity in aligning its trade policy with Washington's protectionist agenda. But here's the irony: by raising tariffs on Chinese imports, Mexico risks alienating not only one of its most important trading partners but also its own domestic consumers who will ultimately bear the brunt of price hikes. Remember, Mexico is one of the biggest importers of Chinese cars, a reality that played into the hands of companies like BYD Company, which has seen growing popularity across multiple markets including Russia and Germany. Treasury Secretary Bessent's suggestion that Canada should follow Mexico in matching U.S. tariffs is wrapped in the appealing rhetoric of protecting North American industries from the so-called flood of Chinese imports. But let's call a spade a spade. This isn't about protecting jobs, it's about erecting barriers to innovation and growth. By encouraging tariff alignment, the U.S. is essentially saying, if you can't beat them, join us in beating yourselves. This strange sort of economic solidarity might look good on paper, but the history of protectionism teaches us that tariffs are a double-edged sword. A biting example comes from the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, a policy widely blamed for exacerbating the Great Depression by choking off international trade. Fast forward to the present day, and similar policy maneuvers are under consideration. According to recent research by the Peterson Institute for International Economics, every 10% increase in tariffs has historically correlated with an approximate 0.5% drop in GDP growth for the countries involved. With North America's combined economy worth over $30 trillion, even a fractional decline could translate into billions lost and millions of jobs decimated. But wait, there's more drama. This isn't just an economic policy debate, it's a twisted saga of geopolitical maneuvering. President Trump has publicly linked tariffs to issues far removed from trade, like the flow of fentanyl and undocumented migrants. In a move that's as perplexing as it is politicized, he has complained about Chinese investment in Mexico and pointed a finger at the notion that Chinese components in vehicles made in Mexico are somehow a national security threat. Meanwhile, Mexico seems to be carting out a bizarre double act. On one hand, it's touting tariff negotiations intended to protect its markets; on the other hand, it's actively cooperating with U.S. authorities on security matters. Mexican officials have even handed over 29 individuals accused of drug trafficking, signaling an attempt to secure our common border. Yet this security cooperation appears to be a cover for the broader economic policy missteps that are setting the stage for a tariff-induced recession. While the US celebrates these security milestones as victories against drug cartels, the average citizen, whether in Mexico, Canada, or the United States, is left paying higher prices at the pump and at the supermarket. The immediate financial markets are already feeling the sting. For instance, following Besant's on-air hints, the Mexican peso erased its earlier losses and hovered around 20.51 per dollar, barely a sign of relief but rather a temporary pause in the face of looming uncertainty. Currency markets thrive on stability and predictable policy, neither of which is in the tariff promotion playbook. With all parties hinting at further tariff escalations, the likelihood of prolonged market volatility is high. Investors are left wondering, when the political spectacle turns into economic reality, who will be left holding the bag? North America's tariff dance isn't just an isolated incident, it's emblematic of a new era in international relations where national interests trump global cooperation. Countries dependent on the region's giant consumer markets might find themselves caught in the crossfire. Trade deficits, inflationary pressures, and supply chain disruptions in one corner of the world ripple through global markets. Just look at recent trends in semiconductor shortages, a scenario exacerbated by protectionist policies that have forced tech giants and automakers to halt production lines and delay product launches. The global economy, still recovering from the shocks of the previous decade's crises, now faces the very real threat of stall and recession. Recent data from the World Trade Organization, WTO, indicate that global merchandise trade growth is expected to slow from 4.2% in 2022 to an estimated 2.8% in 2023, an ominous sign that tariff wars and trade restrictions aren't doing anyone any favors. When major economies start playing tit for tat in tariff imposition, it's not just a regional issue, it's a globally synchronized economic hiccup that undermines investment, innovation, and income security internationally. For those of us who study economics day in and day out, there's a painfully familiar refrain echoing through the corridors of policy-making: government mismanagement and the seductive allure of simplistic, nationalistic solutions inevitably lead to long-term economic self-sabotage. The Fortress North America proposition is the latest installment in a series of short-sighted moves that disregard the complex, intertwined nature of modern trade. Instead of embracing a strategy of free trade, where comparative advantage and specialization drive efficiency, the current approach is to erect barriers and engage in policy theatrics that benefit political leaders more than economic citizens. Take Canada, for instance. It already imposed tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, steel, and aluminum this past summer in a bid to align with U.S. policy. While those measures might have been well-intentioned, the potential second wave of tariffs, targeting critical minerals, semiconductors, and solar panels, is a satirical farce dressed up as strategic negotiation leverage. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly recently alluded to these discussions with a hopeful tone, yet the underlying message remains: follow the U.S. lead or face dire economic consequences. Such overtures betray an unhealthy dependency and an inability to chart an independent course in global trade matters. For every policymaker patting themselves on the back for standing up to China, there's an everyday consumer paying the price. As tariffs drive up the cost of imported goods, inflationary pressures are likely to mount. Recent data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics have already noted pockets of consumer price increases in sectors dependent on imported components, from electronics to automobiles. Those terrific extras, often touted as a cost of national protection, quickly trickle down to households already enduring tough economic times. Small business owners, who depend on global supply chains, face rising operational costs, and uncertainty hampers investment decisions. For workers in industries reliant on foreign parts, like manufacturing, the promise of job protection becomes a mirage. Instead of a robust, resilient economy, we see the slow creep of a recession fueled by policies designed more for political showmanship than economic pragmatism. The irony is thick: in an effort to protect domestic jobs, governments might just be setting the stage for a broader economic downturn. The Fortress North America proposal is a masterclass in political theater, a spectacle designed to resonate with nationalist sentiments while offering little more than a temporary bandage on structural economic issues. The core problem is not foreign competition per se, but rather decades of insufficient investment in innovation, infrastructure, and education. Instead of solving these deep-seated issues, elected officials are busy stringing along a narrative that externalizes blame and cloaks ill-prepared policy decisions in a veneer of patriotism. Let's be clear, there is no magic solution at the end of the tariff trade war tunnel. Aligning policies might offer short-term diplomatic comfort, but it simultaneously deepens market divisions and sets off alarm bells for investors and economists alike. The emerging evidence, supported by compelling data from reputable institutions, is that isolationism and protectionism lead not to prosperity, but to stagnation and recession. And while the politicians may be too busy congratulating themselves on a nice gesture, the real cost is paid by consumers, workers, and future generations. In the end, the tariff tic-tac-toe unfolding on the North American stage serves as a stark reminder that economic self-interest cannot be reduced to simplistic slogans or temporary alliances. Policymakers must wake up from the delusion that unilateral retaliation and symbolic gestures can resolve decades of economic mismanagement. The data is clear: tariffs disrupt global supply chains, raise consumer prices, and risk igniting a recession that could rival the worst economic downturns of our time. What we need is not a fortress built on walls of tariffs, but a robust economic strategy anchored in sound fiscal policy, strategic investments in industry, technology, and education, and, above all, a commitment to true international collaboration. Until then, every move to match tariffs only reinforces the cycle of economic decline, a cycle that casts a long, dark shadow over the prosperity that so many North Americans have come to expect. This has been Boss Economics World, where we call out the nonsense, lay down the facts, and remind you that while tariff talk might make for great political theater, the real show is happening in your wallet. Stay informed, stay critical, and always question who truly benefits when our leaders choose the path of protection over progress.